these young men and women that don't currently have the tools in modern school and society. They're just not taught how to connect to their soul. They're not taught how to be creative and how to honor and how to express, right? It's not part of any curriculum.
Hi, and welcome to the very first episode of A Curious Catalyst, a podcast where we will be diving in with visionaries and entrepreneurs and find out just all the tips and tricks, hacks and struggles that we all go through in creating our vision into a reality. And today I am so honored to have as my first guest, the one and only David Beaudry, founder of the Noble Movement Academy, and just such an epic being who, you know, teaches us the ancient wisdom in helping us overcome, you know, depression, anxiety, tapping into extraordinary energy that we have within ourselves, just in a natural way. So welcome, David.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here and dive into the nitty gritty, you know. How can we change the world together, you know?
For sure. It's funny because I Googled your name earlier because I know you quite well, but I thought, what would show up if I didn't know you? And I was like, who is this David Beaudry? And it made me laugh because you have quite a few nicknames online. On your website, it says the man, the magician. And then I forget what the site was, but it said David Beaudry, AKA the Reverend. Where'd you get that nickname?
That was given to me by James Seraph. He would always call me the Reverend because I love to sing and pray. And so he put that on my YouTube. Like, that's my tag on all my YouTube descriptions. Actually, I was like, all right, the Reverend sounds fine to me. I love it.
I love that. That's awesome. So yeah, it would be great if you could explain just a little bit of what it is that you do.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I integrate physical training with spiritual cultivation, right? So what does enlightenment look like now for the modern world, right? And there's time-tested practices from all wisdom traditions, right, that guide us along the way. And so it's like, well, what does that look like now? How do we apply that to our psychology, our belief system? How do we apply that to, like our body awareness, right? So a lot of this training really is about learning how to be in our body, because there's so much wisdom inside of us, inside this vessel, and how to discern when energy outside of ourselves is impeding or blocking our own internal flow, right? And so the ability as a Qigong practitioner is, I can feel and sense my own energy. I can feel and sense someone else's energy. And where there's blockages, that's where there's a shadow, there's a wound, there's a trauma. Let's pay attention to that and ask, how can we open this? And basically it's like clearing the cobwebs. You know, I help people clear the cobwebs so they can feel their soul essence first and foremost. And now from there, okay, I can trust myself. I can trust my body. I can trust my soul. Everything is going to now unfold from there, because the external only mirrors the internal. So that's kind of it, as concise as could be.
I'm sure there's a lot of nuances and like layers to this as well. Mm-hmm. So how did this start for you?
You know, it started, so with the academy, I'll start there because I can go way back to 7 years ago. We'll save that for the later, you know. So about 4 years ago, my background is, I got a degree in psychology to heal my depression, essentially, and to heal my dad's depression. Like, I want to know how to transform my consciousness in college, right? And I played football for 10 years. And I know without football, and that discipline and structure, that was like my first spirituality in a way, right? I probably would have succumbed to depression and suicide. Like, I was very suicidal as a young kid because I was empathic. And so I picked up on all my father's, you know, he didn't have a job for a couple of years, and I was just like swimming in this field. And what happened was, I would go out into nature. I remember 7 years old in Oregon, feeling depressed and sad and lonely, and there was something profound about running through the forest and climbing and being in the river, and there was a freedom in my soul that was like, oh, this is me. This is, oh my God, like, and everything cleared away. And so the most profound memory as a kid was being in nature and riding my bicycle, and that turned into a dedication to the warrior path, which is, whether it's yoga, martial arts, football, a sport. I was like, I'm gonna dedicate to my body, and it wasn't a conscious. I'm gonna dedicate to my body at 9 years old, but so that's where it started, right? That's where it really started. Was like, oh, there's something that I'm here to heal, and I don't know how, but nature knows the way. Nature knows the way. So then, in 2017, I was asked by a dear friend, hey, can you teach me Qigong, certify me? And I was like, well, let me ask Sifu. So my grandmaster, I asked, like, do I have permission to share this lineage and these teachings? He's like, yes, you have my blessing and the school's blessing. And he said, you've trained all the way through masters, so you can certify masters. I was like, well, I ain't ready for all that. So let's start with level 1. Let's start with practitioner, therapist, so it's always been my dream since I was young to be a teacher and be a professor and have an academy. And so it's been in the ethereal realm until 2017. And now we do bi-yearly retreats in Mount Shasta. And that's my favorite, being in community, in intimate spaces, really, is just my favorite thing. So that's kind of how it started. I wanted to heal my depression, and I found Qigong along the way. And I'll say one more thing. When I was studying and reading, because studying is just so beautiful, but to read about these teachings, we'll call them, right? And I would be in like, I was 19 years old, sitting in my community college, studying before football practice, and I was reading The Light of Consciousness, Buddhism, Taoism, like reading all the religions, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm here to become enlightened. That's what I'm here to do, And then I would like fall asleep. I'm a great napper. That's one of my masters here. I would nap in my books. Like, let the download complete. And then it wasn't until 6 or 7 years later when I found Qigong, I was like, oh, like everything I was reading is embodied in these movements, in a direct connection to source, to God, that I can actually tangibly feel. And this is what the masters are talking about, these states of meditation that are achieved, and some achieve them in, high performance activities, right? Being on stage, being in a big game, right? So what I discovered was Qigong allowed me to cultivate the flow state, to calm my mind. And I was like, man, if I knew this when I was playing football, it would have been game over. I would have been in the zone constantly. I would, So that's how it started, in a roundabout way.
I love that though, because it's like through self-healing. And as you said, like it all starts within, right? And that's where, like, as within, so without, I think you referred to that earlier, your own like purpose and bigger vision came through your own self-healing. And you were like, oh, this is what I'm here for. And it was because you went to heal yourself. Like, what better way to find your purpose?
Yeah, totally. I love the fire in the background, by the way. Fabulous.
Thank you. Well, I'm currently in Canada and it's becoming winter, so definitely need.
We have a mini blizzard here on my land right now. The snow is going sideways, and it's intense. I feel like I'm in the dark Norse lands. I'm like, ooh.
It definitely has something cozy and fun when it's like snowing and you get to, cuddle inside and just be like, okay, we're all staying here today.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, because you just landed. You've been there, I guess, over the course of the summer, but you host retreats in Shasta, you said twice a year?
Yes.
And now you are also living there for a brief period of time.
Mm-hmm.
How does that feel? Yeah.
it's interesting because, you know, everything is energy, right? So for those listening, tracking when you go into environments, what your body feels like, your emotions feel like. So being here, I'm looking at a mountain every day, and I just feel this like overwhelming stillness. And it's like a big bear hug,
Mm.
very different from living in Oakland, with the density, right? And so it's why all the ancient mystics would live in the mountains or the deserts. Are like, I ain't gonna be in that neurotic city, I get it now. I get it, So the path is like, how can we be in the mountain and come back into the marketplace and share and grow? And like, I don't want to just disappear in the mountains. It's like, oh, like, and so that's what I feel when I'm here with the mountain. It feels really peaceful. And there's something, interestingly enough, a little not scary, but eerie, because it's so still. It's like,
Mm.
ooh, there's like a mystery that I'm not too sure about. I'm like, ooh, what's really going on here? There's a special essence here, and so anybody want to come to Shasta? Let's train. Let's do it.
I mean, that's definitely an offer that I would take you up on for sure. I know whenever we train in person, there's always something that comes through.
Mm.
Yeah. So because you've been doing the entrepreneur game for a while, like you said, you could go all the way back to 7 if you wanted to, with your story and like how your vision and your purpose here, or your mission here on earth, has been like slowly taking form. What I'd love to know some of the aspects you really love about, knowing that you have a bigger mission here, and then some of the things that you really kind of struggle with that as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting full body chills in this moment. So, first, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't want to have anything to do with business. I was like, psychology, personal trainer for 13 years, and I was like, I'm here to like train and teach people, right? I'm not here to make a bunch of money. That was my old scarcity codes. And something shifted with a dear friend named Amateo Raw. And I took this program that doesn't exist anymore called Profit Ascension. And this is the first business coach that actually saw me and saw my soul and my gifts. And I was like, this is who I'm going to invest with. This is what I'm talking about. And it changed everything. I learned to believe in myself. I learned to believe in my vision and my mission, which I can happily share about, a little later. And so that point of like, oh, I'm here to, like by me playing small, I'm not going to help the people that are searching for this, right? So I was like, okay, so that means that like money is energy and abundance. So the more people I help and support, the more abundance comes and the more I can give back, right? So part of weaving this web is like my bigger purpose is woven into my daily life of like, how do I embody and show up for my wife, for my daughter, for my friends, for my family, and become a better human? Like, how do I become a better human? And from that, everything else is going to follow. And so I would say the double-edged sword of that is like, because I feel this big mission and dedication, sometimes I neglect the people closest to me, right? And I forget, sometimes I call myself the absent-minded professor. And even when I was younger, like every one of my girlfriends at some point was like, "Hey, didn't you think about that?" I was like, "No, man, I'm creating an academy in my mind. Hold on a second." And so I'm always contemplating. I'm contemplating the depths of life, and so sometimes I forget to take out the trash. Helps me be compassionate with myself, because that's part of my gift, is really going into the depths and not being afraid of the shadow. But that's the double-edged sword, of going into the depths and then forgetting about a few things that so then I bring it to, like, how can I now prioritize my family first, and not just my students and my clients and my big vision and my social media presence. Like, how do I balance that? And so that I don't become a slave to, there's times where I just feel overwhelmed. I want to cry, and I do cry. And I'm just like, I lay down on the ground. I'm like, God help me. How do I get out of the way? Because it's not about me. It's about me being a vessel for this energy that wants to bring light to the inner city kids, to moms and dads, to leaders, really. More and more I'm getting clear. Noble Movement Academy trains leaders. I'm here to train teachers and trainers and leaders of all walks. So they're carrying these codes in the boardroom, right? And they know how to ground through their breath when things get intense. They know how to consciously communicate. And the highest skill is the energy cultivation with people, right? Those energy forces that happen, and that's where those uncomfortable conversations that most of us don't want to have. It's like, well, I got to have this conversation, because there's a glaring energetic pattern here that if I don't speak to that, we can't go anywhere. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I love it. And I love how, because like you touched on it briefly, like the inner city kids, and I know you have a huge heart for them and the indigenous, and while those will always be a huge part of your mission, like you will make a fundamental change there. And we can dive into that for the listeners, because I know we do some work together. So I have a clear idea of like what your mission is there, but how you're getting clearer and clearer on, no, I'm here to help the leaders so that they can, in those moments, make decisions and lead from a place of clarity and connected to their like aligned energy and higher source. And, have the ability to have those difficult conversations and to be like, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to step up like into my power. And then I'm going to, speak to this situation and to this, whatever is happening. And from there, like, that's what we need in our world leaders, in any type of leader.
From the heart, right? How do we lead from the heart and from respect and honor, And that's what I see breaking down in the world today. Every system in the world is breaking down, especially in the Western world. And it's because our ego taking control versus our hearts. And it's like, instead of the red and the blue, like fighting, it's like, oh, how do we have a conversation over tea and respect one another as humans? How do we respect one another and honor each other's differences and say, actually, we have the same goal. We want harmony. We want peace. And so a big part of it is letting go of the victimhood and taking responsibility for our life and be like, oh, you're not my problem. My problem's not out there. My problem is inside here.
Yep. That's always that mirror, right? So you're saying earlier that, the absent-minded professor, and in every relationship that you've had, and I know now you're married to a beautiful woman and have a gorgeous daughter. How have you, like, what are some of the hacks is a weird word for it, but like habits that you've cultivated big, that balance is, not always easy to come by, but what are some of the habits you've cultivated?
The last 3 years, I've really been praying on it, So like the first habit is like, opening up to spirit, like, spirit, how do I create more harmony with my wife and my daughter? How can I show up better? So when we start to ask better questions, we get better answers. So before I was asking those questions, I was just going along on default. Like, honey, I got to do this. I got to build the business. I'm like, that's in that survival mode. And I was like, wait, I'm not here to be in survival mode. I'm here to be at peace and thrive. And if the home front isn't a priority and in order, then everything else, what is it even worth, right? So that's the first habit of like, when something's off, I go to source. I go to God. I'm like, God, open the way for healing here. So for my wife and I, it's having those times, and we're starting to set them up in a rhythm, at least, a couple of times a month, where we sit down and, we call it Sunday Fun Day, right? We go for a drive into nature. And during that hour, we're talking, we're chatting. And then at home, we have time where Alea's, it's like we just have our private time of like, okay, like, let's connect. And like, where are you? And this is what's frustrating me. And, I'm sorry for not showing up in that way for you, honey. And so we're able to create that safe environment where like we're on the same team, right? And so there's a couple of times where the last year I really feel kind of, I would say proud of us for like leaning in deeper and not being afraid to have some fire, right? Because I tend toward water and compassion and gentleness, and I'm like, fuck this, I need to say this, like and it has to have a little fire to it,
Yeah.
for her to really hear it. And so I feel like both of our capacities to lean in and not be afraid of big emotions, and at the same time lead with our heart, so going into a conversation with my wife that is going to be, I know, a little bit uncomfortable, challenging, like, asking, bring in the support for this, for clear communication, bring in, and then I'll say something like, don't take anything personally, David. Like, this is about us coming together and healing these wounds, essentially, because every relationship will show us wounds and shadows. So we're healing our root and our second chakra,
Yeah.
abundance and trust and sexuality and like all these things that have been just distorted really from our culture and from religion. And how do we strip away the old codes from our parents and school and come to a new place? How do we grow together? So the hacks would be, come to your center first and get clear. Like, what do I need? What's off in my relationship here? Oh, wow, I'm taking responsibility. I haven't been showing up in this way. I haven't been doing the dishes like I said I was going to do. I haven't been spending time with my daughter like I said I was, and owning that. Be like, I'm so sorry. And I remember saying that, and then I got busy, because that's what happens, right? And as an entrepreneur, it's just like, like it's on my mind all the time. How can I become a better leader? How can I become a better teacher and show up for everyone? So those energetic chords that happen as a leader, you're managing teams or whatever. It's like, okay, how do I clear all that out of my way?
Yeah.
Take some deep breath and come to center and be like, this is what's I'm being honest about. This is what's really needed that I haven't shared yet with my team, with my wife, or with my daughter. And so that's really first and foremost. And then second would be like creating time with your partner, weekly, bi-weekly, at least monthly, right? Like, let's sit down and connect and have quality time. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. And I loved what you touched on earlier, because I think it applies in partnership for sure. And whatever partnership is, I think, because you are in like a marriage partnership, other people might just be in any type of relationship, or even with just your friends and like the people around you, like those habits apply to all of those types of relationships. And I think one of the key things you mentioned is when you go into these conversations, it's like, okay, if it's a clarifying conversation specifically, it's like, okay, don't take anything personally, because you're both in expression, right? You're both there to say something. And if you're going to go in and feel attacked or be taking it personally, then you're always going to respond out of like a reactive defensive state. But that's not, I mean, they might be right or they might not be right. That's kind of irrelevant in that moment. It's just about being open and letting them express and not taking it in, so that when you respond, you can respond from oh, you know what? This part, you're right. And I apologize. Or I'd like to discuss this further because I don't understand. But then you really get a deep understanding from both sides of what's going on. What is their experience right now? Because we're all creating our own, we can live the same moment, but we're creating our own reality. So what I'm experiencing in this exact moment, for example, is very different than what you're experiencing, even though we're sharing this moment. And so being able to come at it from that thing, I think or that space is so important, to be like, okay, I'm in my sovereignty and I'm going to hold that space for you to express, and also not take it on as like a cloak. I'm not going to wear it just because you're expressing it and react to it instantly.
Yes. I feel like with you in our conversation, I've been training in that dojo too. It's like, so our relationships become a dojo, and the people we trust most, it's like, it's safe enough to go there, and it's important to be aware of who are those people that I really trust and feel like can see me, hear me, listen well. And so I'm grateful for our relationship in that way. Right.
Yeah. I know that Because like you said, we have cultivated that space that we can practice this. And so I know I can come with anything and you won't be weirded out or be like, whoa, that's like, what's going on here? But a huge thing I've learned from us creating that space is to breathe into it. Because breathing, I know, is a big part of what you teach in your practice. And it's become a huge part of mine because just realizing how much breath can connect us with ourselves and like take us out of the whole mind thing that's happening, right? Because you get so here, and if it's like, no, take, even if it's just 3 breaths, it's like stop, get out of your head, and then so much clarity arises, and then you don't have to be,
Yes.
all up in.
Amen. A woman. Amen. Hallelujah. Praise the goddess.
Yeah. So then a question that I would have, because I tend to be quite water and like, oh, let's cultivate, like, is everybody okay? And let's create peace. But like you said, that fire is really important. And again, I don't think it matters what in partnership for sure, because you have to be able to like express, and that fire is really important to keep that tension between the 2 parties. But how do you cultivate that fire and express it in a healthy manner so that you're not just attack, but then it's like, we need the fire, but there's different ways about going about that, right?
Yes. Well, I'm glad you asked this question. This is the key code to all the universe, you see. So one analogy I learned from a dear friend and teacher, he said like as a dragon, right? Like that embodiment of power. How do we bring compassion first and fire second? So like you only want to use Thor's hammer maybe 5% of the time. You don't want to be hammering everybody, right? And we see this in the old paradigm of business of like, it's just like, no, this is the way. And there's this over compensation, I would call it, and control. Whereas the new leadership is, how do I come from the feminine first and a place of harmony, understanding? So whenever I have a challenging conversation, I come with, I'm coming with respect and honor and love. So this comes from my love for you, right? This comes from my respect for you. And it's only a trusted friend that's going to give you that strong feedback that you need to hear, right? And occasionally we'll get it from somebody we don't know. And it's kind of unsolicited feedback, which is sometimes good and sometimes like, hey, you don't even know me. Don't judge me, motherfucker, right? So for me, as a more water person, the last 5 years, I've really had to develop, like, how do I express fire safely? What does that look like? How do I be big? And it's an energetic. It's not even through my words. It's through my energy and my eyes and my presence of like, I'm firm on this. And you can even feel it in my voice, right? I'm like now speaking from my belly. I'm like, this is what's true to me. And your truth will most likely be different. And I honor your truth. Can you honor my truth? And can we come to a meeting place, And from that meeting place of honor and respect, now there's safety, right? So creating that safety, and I'm reading a great book that I highly recommend everyone listening to this podcast in this very moment. It's called The Culture Code. And so it's like kind of breaks down to these 3 principles, right? There's like safety and trust first, right? Now you can share vulnerability. Now you can see the shared goal, right? That shared goal of like, okay, whether it's a business or a romantic relationship or a friendship, like, oh, do we have the same vision? Are we going the same direction or not? And so like that creates the culture that you're building in every little environment of like, oh, we're developing a culture of safety and authenticity where you're not going to be made bad or wrong for sharing that you're angry or upset or that you're crying or that you're whatever. I'm like, hey, it's all allowed here. It's all allowed here. Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry for not understanding. So that humbleness, like, I'm sorry for not showing up in this way. I'm sorry that you feel that way, even though that wasn't my intention, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry that it landed this way. And then then the guard's down. It's like, oh, wow, like this person is not just projecting and blaming me. They're taking ownership and saying, hey, I'm sorry that I played a role in this.
I like that. And I like the combination of, okay, while you still have to bring that fire, there is a, like, coming from softness. Like the fire can still come from softness, or softness might not be the fire can still come from the feminine, because it isn't always soft.
Yes. Right.
But it's
Kali
from
energy.
Exactly.
It's like lava. It's lava instead of like a hot flame. It's like, this is coming from like the lava energy that's patient and not just like throwing fireballs at you. It's like, hey, motherfucker, boom, boom.
I love that analogy. I'm actually going to start using that now, because lava still flows, even though it is that fire.
And it's stronger, right? It's like so like this creates a fucking mountain. This creates an island.
Yeah.
Right? Those soft flame, those fireballs just get burnt up in the water, but the magma starts to penetrate the water and penetrate and build.
Building from fire. I like that. So, because you brought up culture code, which I'll put a link to in the comments here. But what are the other two pillars? Because now I'm curious.
Yeah, so that first pillar is like safety and trust, right? The greatest teams, you know, the Navy SEALs, HEAL Team 6, Google, the San Antonio Spurs, these different sports teams, right? Think about New England Patriots, right? What do they have? They have a culture, right? That allows them. So that's the first, is safety and trust. The second is vulnerability. So when, as a leader, you share, you know, up front, like, hey, team, I messed up. I'm sorry, you know, I said we were going to do this and this happened. I didn't follow through. Or I took us all in this direction. Let's stop and audible, you know, and like take a pause. Is this really the direction we need to go? And so like surrounding ourselves with with people that are going to be vulnerable and share authentically. Like, hey, you know, I don't think this is a good idea, David. Why? Thank you for sharing that, you know? And so if I create a culture where I only want yes people, they're like, sure, that's a great idea. That's
limiting
why the
your own
emperors,
growth, essentially.
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I think I always, the analogy back to the ancient days, like the kings and the queens always had advisors, right? They always had someone, an oracle, a Taoist priest, whatever, you know, the divine feminine to be like, hey, like, what am I not seeing here? Can you please share with me objectively, you know, because I'm in the woods, but you're outside the woods, and you can help me see, oh man, I've been cutting down these trees over here that I shouldn't be cutting down. So that's the vulnerability piece of an authenticity is the second step. And then the third is getting clear on our shared vision and purpose together, whether you're a sports team, a business team, whether you're a family, right? As a family, it's like, what are we doing as a family? Oh, like, what do we want to instill in our daughter? You know, what are these principles we want to instill around the holidays? What does it mean to be a good human? And if those things aren't at the maybe the background of our mind, then we just do business as usual. And I missed 10 years. I'm like, well, I actually never taught my daughter how to love herself. How did that happen? Wait a second, you know? So like that vision of like, oh, I'm here to express love and develop these principles that when I die, it's still going to live on. These principles, these visions that each one of you carry as leaders. It's like, you know, what legacy do you want to leave when you die? You know, authenticity, trust, safety, and that vision of a better world, whatever that vision looks like for you. And that keeps everybody on a North Star. And everybody's agendas are able to like, oh, we all have slightly different agendas, but still have this shared vision.
Yeah. I love those. They're all very dear. Like that's how I operate in life in general. So they're all very like close to me. And I also love that it breaks down into three, because even the alchemical principle, right, of everything, whether it's a theory like that or, you know, a tree or a human, it all breaks down into three parts. And so just having like these three key principles is so important. And being, like in any type of relationship, whether it's in your business or like you said, your marriage or your friendships, having these three things will really bond us all together. And even just interacting with any human being, essentially. Out of these three principles is just like, okay, it will make the world a better place. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's so beautiful. I'm trying to think of where to go from here, but I know that we talked a little bit about your mission earlier, but I'd love to just kind of expand on that. Like, what is so that third principle, like, what is your bigger vision?
Mm. The last 2 years, I've been refining it, and I would say the first mission is to leave a legacy of love, right? Of like, when I die, I know that I've done my best, right? So on like a individual level, right? And for the
Mm-hmm.
academy, step one is like I want to train leaders and people who want to go take tools into whatever program they want, whether it's business or the elders or the kids. Like, who do you want to help? Who do you feel called to serve? I want to serve you so you show up better. So that vision of really helping these future leaders, right? Because we're all leaders now and the world's falling apart. So let's strap our boots on and lean in from our hearts. So to train leaders, healers, coaches, social change agents, right? Like, who want to really make a difference. And then third, underlying that is like really building a school that lives on when I'm done. That's like
Mm-hmm.
continuing to help heal our emotions, right? Help heal our trauma, help heal our wounds, and create safety for those things to happen. And then inevitably, I feel like bringing these tools to the indigenous communities, the underserved, the Black communities, the brown communities, where there's so much generational trauma, to have a person that can go in there and teach the kids how to breathe and how to feel their emotions, how to feel safe to express, is going to make a huge difference for our future. So that kind of three-prong, the magic is in the threes, right? Physical, energetic, spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
So that capacity of like, how can we heal the land? How can I, as we become, in 5 years, I feel like we will be a multi-million-dollar company. I just feel that in my bones. And with that, we'll have the funds to buy back land for the natives. We'll have funds to create programs and scholarships for these young men and women that don't currently have the tools in modern school and society. They're just not taught how to connect to their soul. They're not taught how to be creative and how to honor and how to express, right? It's not part of any curriculum in typically,
Yeah.
So how do we create that new paradigm of education for the soul?
I love that. And even when you were speaking earlier about like elders as well as children, like to tap into their emotions so that they can express from like authenticity, it's like giving me goosebumps because I think that's so important. There's such a misunderstanding around expression and communication in our current society because in North America, it's very, I don't want to insult. And we've gone to an extreme around like politically correct. And not that we shouldn't keep these things in mind, but there is also a level of authenticity that's gotten lost in I don't want to insult anyone, and I don't feel like I can express my
Yeah.
truth in this. But as we were talking earlier, like when it comes from that, like that love, no matter what you need to express, like you can speak your truth without damaging the other party.
Yes. Yes. And that love melts the hardness of our hearts. That unconditional acceptance for all that you are melts the armor that we built up. Because our parents told us that we're being too loud, and or like, for men, really, I definitely feel a calling to help men, because in our society, like I've met with a lot of men that when they were young, they cried, and their mom or dad said, "Hey, don't cry, like be a man, like just get it together, And so then they close it like, oh, it's not safe or okay for me to cry. And so grief gets stuck, sadness, pain just starts to, because we're not allowing ourselves to weep, to cry. Life is sad. Don't get it
Yeah.
twisted. Life is beautiful and life is sad as fuck,
Yeah.
And so the Mayan, Martin Prechtel, he has an amazing book for those of you budding shamans out there. It's called The Smell of Dust on Rain, Grief and Praise. It's
Mm-mm.
absolutely the most beautiful book I've ever read on healing our hearts, because grief is a natural part of life. To grieve for those we've lost, to cry when something has ended, right, is totally
Yeah.
natural. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's because it meant something. We praise that which we lost,
Yeah.
so if we don't cry, Martin Bertel and other traditions, they call it, and from a medical Qigong perspective, it's stagnant grief, right?
Hmm.
Cancer is stagnant emotion. Those
Huh.
energy patterns have not been able to release, and it's hardened. The anger has hardened in the liver. The sadness has hardened in the lungs. The distrust of life has hardened into their pancreas and their spleen,
Mhm.
because over the last 50 years, they've never really been able to express that emotion, which now has manifested from the spiritual, the emotional, now to the physical body that is bound.
Yeah. Yeah. I forget, I was watching I think it's called Heal. It was a documentary on Netflix, and they talk about disease as dis-ease, and how that's not been processed. And like you said, it's been repressed, and therefore the energy hardens in the body and becomes a tumor or whatever, however it's going to express itself, it's
Mm.
going to come out in a certain way. I know that when we meet, it's you being able to just like allow your emotion to come out when you have to has taught me how to do that same, in our meetings and just elsewhere. But I remember once you
Mm.
were telling me, and I think it was, um, you were starting the new year of the academy, and you were
Mhm.
having one of your intro calls, and I think you said like, oh, and I started crying. And then Kellen, one of your things is like, oh, the year's officially started. David's cried. And I just
That's
remember
funny.
thinking,
Yeah.
that's so brilliant. Like, it's almost expected now that you are always going to be really authentic in your emotions. And
Mm.
I'm guessing they weren't tears of grief or pain. Maybe they were, but because
Mm.
there's also
Yeah,
joy,
they were
right?
joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was overwhelming gratitude. I'm like, my dream is being fulfilled right in this moment. Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa, this is tripping me out. Like everything I've prayed for since I was a little boy is like right here, and I can feel it bubbling up now. I'm like, wow, like, so to cry in gratitude, to
Mm.
cry in joy, to cry and I've learned as a human, the most powerful way to express emotion, just naturally, we start crying. It's like, why am I crying? I'm angry. What the fuck? You know?
That one I experience
So
all the time. And I find it so
yeah.
frustrating because it's like, no, I am
Mm.
angry and I want you to take me seriously and I want you to be scared and like listen. And then here you're like, I'm crying. And I'm like, how can I be intimidating if I'm crying? But somebody told me once, she was like, it's actually a blessing because you can act out of your anger, but if you're crying, because I can't talk and cry at the same time, it's just a glitch.
Mm.
um,
Mm.
but so it forces me to stop. So in my anger,
Yeah.
I'm literally forced by my body to stop and think about what's happening because I can't, like, I physically can't even
Mm.
express in that moment. Um,
Mm.
and so it's like
Mm.
a blessing in disguise, I guess you could say. It took me a
Yes.
long time to
Yeah.
see it that way, but it's a blessing in
Blessing in
disguise because it's like,
disguise.
okay, how can I now? I have to take those breaths and stop.
Mm.
And then after, usually takes like a minute or two, then I'm
Yeah.
able to speak my truth, but from a clearer place
Mm.
because I've had to, I've been forced to take
Yeah.
those breaths.
I'm curious to ask you a question and just flip the script here for a second.
Uh-huh.
So for you, when you find those times when you're angry and you need to express something and you feel those tears, like, does the other person immediately start to support you or try to like defend or like or do they allow the pause, or do you need to say, hey, can you just give me a moment?
So I think it's changed over the years, because my relationship with it has changed over the years. And it kind of
Mm-hmm.
comes to those two pillars of vulnerability and authenticity, and like truth and trust. And so, whereas in the beginning it would just happen. And so I couldn't speak. And so they would take that moment to either comfort me or to like, oh, now
Yeah.
I can like overpower because she's in
Mm-hmm.
this what seems
Yin.
like a yin state, exactly, when it's just my yang, I guess, expressing a different way. But
Yeah. Yang going in. It's like,
it's like, oh, exactly. Whereas now I can, like, I've become so attuned with my body and my being, that I'll feel it coming up, and I will express that I'm going to start crying in a moment, and I need to express what I'm about to say, but I can't do that and cry at the same time.
so now you express that too.
And now
then.
I tell them, yes, like, this is what is happening, and I'm so angry, I'm about to cry, and I need a minute. I need you to give me a minute in order to be able to actually get out what I want to say before you start speaking. Like, I will actually request that beautiful. Of them. And so now they do, most often, they allow that space. Because in that moment, I also don't want comfort, right? And as sweet and as loving as that may be, that's not what I need. Like, I need to express. That's why I'm angry. And so requesting that space and like, okay, just wait, give me a minute, because this needs to be spoken. And so that's made the world of difference.
So I want to like note for leaders who are tuning in, like, that's like an important master skill to have, because everything is emotion, really, like, and that ability, like emotional intelligence, is what separates the successful leaders from the unsuccessful, because they don't know how to be with people and set up the container. So you're setting up the container and the safety and expectation. So they're like, oh, okay, this is what she needs to feel supported. So then you now are empowering your friend or your business partner to do the same. Of like, okay, this is what I need in this moment. This is coming up. Just patience, and then it's woven into the culture. It's woven into the family dynamic when my wife is, going into it, or my daughter's freaking. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to breathe. And what's really going on, little Alea? Why are you being mean to great grandma? What's really underneath that?
Yeah. Well, and that's actually, I mean, if you don't mind sharing, because that is such a brilliant story when you asked her that, because children are so much more intelligent and so much more attuned to because if we haven't repressed it yet, they have a deeper understanding. And so could you share, like, when she was asked that question, like, what was that?
This is great. This is so about 3 weeks ago, when I was on medical Qigong retreat, gone 12 hours a day, my wife had her mom and grandma come. So we had 4 generations of women, right? And so my little daughter, Alea, was being mean to great grandma. We call her Gigi. And she was like, no, you cannot get in the hot tub. No, and she was just like being real mean. And I don't want Gigi. I don't want Gigi now. And so she got upset and went under a table. My little daughter went under a table. She was like, and so Lindsay, my wife, she comes over and she said, honey, comes soft. She said, honey, what's going on? Like, why are you being mean to Gigi? And Alea says, I'm being mean to Gigi because Dad's not here to be aggressive with, to like get out, because we chase, we run, we become animals and tigers, and she climbs on top of me, so like that energy of expression isn't being fulfilled, just with all the women. She's now all around women, and she's like, wait, I'm not getting this expression, so now I'm going to take it out on poor old great grandma.
Well, and why I love that story so much is because, one, she actually understands what's happening in her body. And that has so much to do with how you and Lindsay have raised her. Like, that's so beautiful that you're like, okay, you're in tune with, like I said, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. And she is cultivating that. And she's only 3, I think she just turned, right? Yeah. Okay. And so she's in tune with this already. And then another part of that, which I think is brilliant, is so she understands what's going on, and you usually carry that energy. So there's a balance, right? And she is a little girl, but she also understands, like, she needs the aggressiveness as well as the softness and the whatever. And then after that moment, your Lindsay, your wife, she was able to also, like, okay, let's bring in more of the, like, let's play or whatever. Because just because there's women there doesn't mean they don't hold that balance and can't create that for her as well. And so I think it's just such a beautiful example and story. I love it. One of my favorites.
It's just, I was cracking. I was like, oh my God, this is my 3-year-old. Holy cow.
I
I was like,
know.
and so that's the magic of children, so any parents out there, like, how can we ask them questions and create a safe space for them to share what's ever in their little heart. That's all that's
Mhm.
needed. They just want to be heard and listened to, and that's it. It's like, oh, I hear you. Thank you for sharing, little one. That's it. We don't need to fix it. Like, oh, like, let's redirect and like, let's not pay attention to your tears and let's try to play a game. It's like, no, 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 no. Oh, tell me more. What's going on?
Mm.
Okay, you're upset about this. You're sad. Oh, you're angry. Thank you for sharing, and like not sidestepping it. And the reason why adults sidestep it is because we don't know how to deal with it. We haven't dealt with it in our own being. Our parents
Yeah.
said, no, you can't cry. And so we're like, oh, the child's crying. I don't know what to do. Hey, honey, what do we do about this crying child?
Yeah. Well, and I think just think of
So,
how we'd all be able to express if we'd all had that growing up.
yeah,
Like the
yeah.
world would be so different.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. This has been so beautiful. Is there anything you feel like, oh, I really feel like the world needs to know this or I want to share? I'd love to hear any nuggets that you have left that you want to express.
My favorite thing is to breathe and pray. So I'd love to just like give a transmission for 5 minutes, from spirit for everyone listening here. So take a moment if you're sitting down or if you're, you can close your eyes. If you're driving in a car, please keep your eyes open. And know that the transmission will come through crystal clear no matter what. So feeling our feet on the ground and taking a deep breath into our nose, down into our lower belly. As you exhale, letting out a sigh, the ancient sound of the heart, sending a smile to our heart. One more time, softening the heart. You feel your spine is like a pillar. Your feet are in the earth, tailbone is in the earth. Your belly and your heart are full of your energy, your unique soul vibration. Breathe into that. Give yourself permission to express your soul right now and throughout your day and through the coming days. Give yourself full permission to express and call in the support that's needed. And feel now as you breathe in into the heart, tune into gratitude. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being a leader. Thank you for being a way shower. I honor you. I see you. Then breathe into your mind's eye, your pineal gland, and see your pineal gland begin to light up. And calling on that higher power, source, great spirit, to clarify your mind. God, open the way so that our minds can be clear, that we can express from our hearts, and from our throats, and from our bellies, creating a place of safety inside of ourselves right now. And breathe that in, and you can even imagine like a pillar around you or a cocoon of love and strength. We'll take 5 deep breaths, inhaling through the nose, the little sound. Breathe into the belly first. Now let the heart and the chest expand. Exhale. Anything in the way of your expression, clearing that out. Breathing in big. Now. Breathing in this safe space inside your heart. A little bit bigger, calling in that strength and that love and that support. Bringing courage to have those uncomfortable conversations with those you care about. Bringing courage to be honest with yourself. Let's take 3 more. Sending a smile to that inner child inside of you. It's okay, little one, to be big. It's okay to express all of your emotions here, dear one. And one more, breathe in, hold it at the top. Hold it. Now relax your shoulders, round your belly, soften, and exhale slow as you can. Feel the vibration of the divine inside your belly, your heart, your spine. Feel the clarity in your mind. And feel all the support you need is within you now. All the courage, love, compassion you need is within you now. And feel this recalibration inside, a feeling of being at home. And take 3 more slow, quiet breaths, smiling internally to your heart. And when you're ready, bring one hand to your heart, one hand to your belly. And do a real smile. Smile to your heart, massage your heart, your belly. Tune into gratitude. What a blessing this life is. What a Freya Day. It's a day of celebration, divine feminine. Let's celebrate life. Let's celebrate our expression. Let's have a dance party, yo.
Yes.
Do what brings you joy. Do what brings you joy.
Aho to that. Do what brings you joy.
Thank you. What an honor to be here in this first container with you. I see you as a leader, as a way shower. Thank you for your gifts, Jara Decker, and all that you bring. Really an honor.
Thank you so much. This has just been so much fun. I know I get to talk to you all the time, but it's been, knowing that we get to share this has added like an extra element. So thank you so much. And I will put all the links to what David does and how you can connect with him into the comments of this. And yeah, this has been brilliant. I hope everybody has a great Freya Day. Go out and celebrate, or whatever day it is when you're listening to this. But yeah, we will be in touch. Thank you.
Hallelujah. Much love. Bye.
Bye.